Level 989.
Welcome to 989 on Health, the show where you don't need years at university to understand the latest news about health and related subjects.
An important announcement for our listeners. This podcast is intended to be an informal tool for laymen and practitioners alike to hear our viewpoints on health and wellness. Don't rely on the information in this podcast as an alternative to medical advice from your doctor or other professional healthcare provider. For the full disclaimer, please see our website.
I'm Mike Develos, just a guy, an average Joe, and I'm joined by the opposite of average, Brandon Weintraub, a primary care physician. Good morning, Brandon.
And good morning, Mike.
Our topic for today is digestion. As with most terms that have to do with science and medicine, it's a word that packs in a lot of complexity. When most people think of digestion, they think of stomach acids or the large intestine, or hey, the end result. Yes, I mean poop. We can talk about poop, right? You can stomach it.
Come on, Mike. Focus.
All right. It's weird to think about, but for humans and many other animals, digestion starts outside the body. It's really all about breaking big, dense chunks of food into a form that can be easily absorbed by the body. In the case of humans, when we're cooking our food, that has a huge impact on the physical structure of all the protein, starches, fats. And when we're slicing up our steak with a knife or dropping some fruit and kale into a blender for a smoothie, we're pre-digesting our food.
That's right, and there's a number of other examples and other ways to pre-digest food. Tofu, cheeses, bread, beer, sausages, sauerkraut, chocolate, yogurt. All of these have some aspect of pre-digestion. I could go on.
Exactly. And the types of food a creature eats and what the body has to go through to digest it has a huge impact on how the body has to be structured, like a cow and its four-chambered stomach. It's an odd but necessary feature to extract food energy from grass, which is a slow process that strongly influences body size. Radical changes in diet can really impact the rest of your behavior. Like a panda, it's a bear that lives almost entirely on bamboo, but its digestive system is still the digestive system of a carnivore. It's in no way optimized for plant matter. So the panda has to spend like 18 hours a day eating bamboo just to stay alive. Now, this question's a bit out there, but it's on topic, really. I think I've even read somewhere that the development of pre-digestion technology, that is, food preparation tools and cooking, actually allowed for pretty radical changes to the human skull, something about muscles and teeth and even brain size. Is this true?
I can't say for certain. It's a bit outside my expertise and experience, but I will say that diet has most certainly played a role in how the human race is changed and adapted over time. The theories you're describing essentially state that by finding and using ways to cook and prepare food, prior versions of humanity were able to extract more calories and more nutrition from their foods than they would have otherwise been able to. It's these greater troves of fuel that allowed their systems to grow and adapt with greater efficiency.
It's crazy to think that just adjusting the difficulty of digesting could have such a huge impact on your whole body. But our bodies are very efficient machines, and it doesn't maintain anything that's not needed. I think a quick way to demonstrate this idea is astronauts. Just a short time in space, and they start to lose bone mass because their bodies aren't fighting gravity. If my previous question wasn't weird enough, how about this one? If generation after generation simply drank all their food in smoothie form, how many human generations would it take to stop producing teeth entirely? I'm just being silly, don't answer that. But fun fact, the human digestive tract is 9 meters. That's about 30 feet long. Let's jump from the outside of the body, all the cooking and chopping, to chewing. What exactly is going on in the mouth when it comes to digestion?
So, the mouth has a couple of different active roles to play, and it's useful to think of the mouth as the beginning of the digestive system. The teeth break down food into smaller particles, which will travel more easily and be easier for the body to process. Just as important is the mouth's action of producing saliva, which is secreted by the salivary glands and can be triggered even by the smell of food. Saliva contains an enzyme called salivary amylase, which breaks down starches, and saliva also serves to moisten the food particles to make it a little easier to pass down the esophagus.
Okay, so the food travels from the mouth to the stomach via the esophagus, and I seem to remember hearing something when I was a kid that if it wasn't for a protective layer of mucus, the acids in the stomach would, I know this sounds weird, but the stomach would digest itself. How does the stomach work?
As with many functions of the human body, the stomach is, frankly, an amazing organ. The stomach contains hydrochloric acid, and it's at a pH and concentration that most certainly would, and could, eat through the protein-based walls of the stomach without too much difficulty. The purpose of the acid is to help break down the food that manages to reach that stage in the digestive tract, and to make it small enough for the vital nutrients to be absorbed once the food reaches the small intestine. So why doesn't the acid, which is definitely powerful enough to break down most foods, manage to eat through the stomach itself? Well, the stomach is lined with epithelial cells, the same types of cells that you can find in places like your nostrils and in other hollow organs in your body. And the epithelial cells produce a mucus, which protects the stomach wall from being eaten away by the hydrochloric acid. What I found especially neat is that the stomach lining produces bicarbonate, which is very basic, and it's basic enough to balance out the strength of the hydrochloric acid. So, hydrochloric acid has a pH of about 2, which is pretty acidic. When that hydrochloric acid meets the bicarbonate produced by the stomach lining, you end up with a pH of about 7, and that's right at the middle of the scale. There are times when stomach acid production is triggered by something other than food, or there isn't enough bicarbonate produced to protect the stomach lining. In these cases, you do end up with what's called a stomach ulcer, and essentially the stomach acid has managed to eat through some of the stomach lining.
I'm always reading random articles, and I'm vaguely recalling something I came across a few years ago. Apparently, your mouth isn't the only part of your body that can taste things. Your gut can detect flavors, which is a simple way of saying it's performing a detailed chemical analysis that helps it know exactly which enzymes and hormones it needs to release. Can you explain that for us?
So, I actually hadn't read these articles until I was starting the research I was doing for today's podcast. And honestly, I've only just begun to scratch the surface in terms of understanding what these studies have actually shown regarding the taste receptor specifically in the stomach. What I can tell you is that taste, whether it's occurring deeper in the digestive system or during the initial intake of food in the mouth, plays a vital role in extracting as much nutrition from the food you eat as possible. Based on the flavors present in your food, and modern studies generally accept that there are 5 or 6 primary tastes your tongue can detect. Based on these flavors, your body adjusts the amount of various types of chemicals being released to digest your food. The resultant balance in these chemicals can adjust hunger response, blood sugar regulation, even weight management. It's possible that foods that are pre-digested in some way, soup for example, or something that's been fermented, may send stronger taste signals once they reach your stomach, which in turn makes the body respond more readily and efficiently to digest these foods. In other words, it's possible that you may get a more accurate feeling of being full or still hungry when a food has been adequately digested and tasted.
Next up, the small intestine. The name is misleading, I think. The small intestine's only small when compared to the large intestine, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have a big job, right? What's happening in the small intestine? Is this where the gas is coming from?
The small intestine is where some of the most important stages of digestion occur. In the small intestine, various types of digestive juices are secreted, and carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are broken down to their useful components. The small intestine then absorbs most of the digested food molecules, as well as some water and minerals, and passes them on to other parts of the body for appropriate storage or to be changed chemically if needed. Specialized cells help the absorbed materials cross the intestinal lining into the bloodstream. Keep in mind, I'm definitely simplifying things to make it palatable for our podcast format. Other organs and systems are involved in the process of getting the nutrients, sugars, and fluids throughout the body.
One part of digestion that might be easy to overlook, well, 2 parts really, are the liver and the gallbladder. While your food doesn't actually pass through either one of these, they do play an important role.
They certainly do, and this is the perfect time to bring them up. The liver produces bile, a digestive juice needed to break down fats. The gallbladder stores that bile between meals. When you eat, the gallbladder squeezes the bile through bile ducts, which connect the gallbladder and liver to the small intestine. This bile then mixes with the fat in the food, and the bile acids dissolve the fat into the watery contents in the intestine. So once it's dissolved, the pancreatic and small intestine enzymes can actually finish the work of digesting fats.
Watery contents. That's not very appealing, I have to say. This isn't technically part of digestion, but you and I were talking recently about the gallbladder, since my wife sometimes suffers from gallbladder pain. Now, there's so many concoctions you can find recipes for online. They contain apple cider vinegar or olive oil or other things, all chemical mixtures that are supposed to dissolve gallstones over time. But, like I said a few minutes ago, the digestive tract, and therefore any liquids you drink, don't actually pass through the gallbladder. So, if these supposed remedies work at all, how do they work?
This is a great question, and one I wish more people, and complementary medicine practitioners especially, would ask. When you talk about gallbladder and liver cleanses, one of the first things you'll undoubtedly come across is a cleanse involving a fair amount of oil alongside a strongly acidic compound, and that's usually apple cider vinegar or citrus juice or even apple juice. This particular cleanse is supposed to force your gallbladder to contract, expelling all of the stones that have collected in it. And people who have done this cleanse often see the results as they pass hundreds of tiny little stones at a time after they've tried the cleanse. It's extremely important that our listeners are paying attention now, because this cleanse is nonsense and does not actually help clear gallstones. What this cleanse actually creates is actually saponified oil, which is oil that has coagulated with the citrus and apple juice. The body can't digest as much oil as the cleanse is introduced, and as a result, expels it from the body. The gallbladder is a small organ. An average gallbladder is only about 8 centimeters in length and 4 centimeters in diameter, and that's when it's fully distended. The idea that you could pass hundreds of stones in one go is ridiculous. That isn't to say, though, that there aren't useful ways to help reduce gallbladder and liver issues. Taking a small amount of apple cider vinegar on a regular basis has been shown to improve liver function and reduce inflammation, which means that bile production can be affected in a positive way. However, the goal isn't to expunge or expel existing gallstones. Instead, we want to dissolve or reduce the size of existing stones and possibly prevent their formation in the future.
And while we're talking about organs that play a role in digestion without actually having food pass through them, what's going on with the pancreas and the appendix?
The pancreas produces digestive juices that break down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And the digestive juice that's produced gets pumped into the small intestine via a system of ducts. The pancreas is also instrumental in the regulation of blood sugar. The appendix, on the other hand, is a fascinating and mysterious little appendage that's attached to the colon, and medical experts are still arguing about its actual function. Recent research seems to indicate that the appendix stores beneficial bacteria in order to reseed the body's microbiome when it's needed, but many medical professionals still seem to see it as an unnecessary remnant, that it was basically once needed for some digestive function, but that current human biology no longer requires it.
Okay. There was a bunch of stuff in my reading that I didn't really grasp. There were a lot of references to GI this and GI that. I'm guessing we're not talking about little plastic arming men, are we? Although, while you're clarifying that, maybe you can add this on. What happens to the random toys we might swallow as kids that never come out? Do I still have a prone position sniper somewhere in my colon?
No, we're not talking about the real American heroes. GI just stands for gastrointestinal. It's another way of talking about the entire collection of organs that play a role in getting food from outside the body to be processed, and then absorbed, and then getting waste excreted. As for the random toys you might have swallowed as a kid, just because you don't see an object come back out of you doesn't mean it hasn't been removed. Thanks to the digestive system, chances are that your little soldier friend has been through a ride of a lifetime. He's been mashed, broken down, and some parts of him have probably been absorbed into the body, and the rest, likely unrecognizable, has been excreted as either urine or feces, depending on his component parts. There's always a concern about the toxins in toys, so I don't recommend repeating the experiment by eating any more of your army guys.
No, I think I outgrew that. But what about those magnet toys that were, I think, recently banned because kids were eating them? Was this actually a problem, or was this just hype?
I do remember this being a big deal sometime around 2012. Children were swallowing small and powerful magnets, like the ones that came with the Buckyball sets. Remember Buckyballs?
Oh, sure.
They were small little spheres that would connect together magnetically, and it would let you make really cool shapes. Well, apparently when children would eat them, mostly because they were small and shiny, and why wouldn't you eat them if you're a 3-year-old, right? And since neodymium magnets aren't really broken down by digestion, unlike the army guy we just mentioned, these magnets would get all the way to the large intestine and then do what magnets do, which is attract and repel. And they were powerful enough to tear holes in the bowels, and a number of cases even needed surgery to remove the magnets and repair the damage. The digestive system, while amazing, is still a fairly fragile thing. It's best to make sure that anything you decide to eat is meant to be eaten. There are always dangers when any object that isn't intended for consumption gets consumed.
And just so I understand fully here, it wasn't if you ate one magnet it would tear up your insides. It was eating multiple magnets that would then interact with each other?
That's correct. The biggest problems were caused when there were multiple magnets that had been eaten by a child.
Understood. All right, where are we? Oh, hey, the large intestine. Echo! So what's the large intestine doing?
Well, no matter how well you've tried to pre-digest your food, and no matter how efficient your body may have been, there's always going to be some products that your digestive system just isn't able to absorb. The waste products of the digestive process include undigested parts of food and older cells from the GI tract lining. The job of the large intestine is to absorb the water and any remaining nutrients that were missed by the small intestine, and then change all of the remaining waste from liquid into stool.
I was trying to find something interesting or funny to say about the anus, but I couldn't. Although, why does my back door burn during a bathroom visit after I've eaten spicy food? I mean, shouldn't any volatile chemicals have been digested away by all those acids and enzymes?
You'd certainly think so, wouldn't you? But in fact, capsaicin, the chemical responsible for that spicy sensation you get from hot peppers, isn't broken down as it goes through your GI tract, and it's known to create an inflammatory response in mucosal lining, which means it's going to burn just as much going in as it does coming out.
As you would expect with something so complex, there are dozens of issues, diseases, and disorders that can occur in the digestive system, each of which could easily justify an entire episode. And we'll probably get to the most common ones at some point. Is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
We've really only covered the extremely basic steps involved in digestion. The reason we decided to discuss this topic is that, as Mike and I discussed future possible podcasts, we realized something pretty interesting. More than half of the ideas we want to cover have to do with the importance of the things we take into our body. The processes that the body has to take to break down and absorb even the most mundane or common items are astonishing. Add to basic digestion the additional systems brought into play when taking a medication, and you end up with a mind-boggling series of bodily functions to understand. So much is going on when you decide to eat that extra snack cake or drink a glass of water. It may seem easier to simply ignore dietary advice or accept it at face value than to figure out what's really going on. Without proper diet and nutrition, you can't hope to improve your health and well-being. The foundation of your body comes from the things you choose to eat and drink. And now, hopefully, as we continue to go into more detail on specific foods and more specific advice, you'll find that you have at least a basic vocabulary and understanding from which we can build.
That's all the time we have for today. These are short episodes that provide a brief overview of very complex topics. Everything we say is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Licensed healthcare professionals should advise you and be aware about changes you make to any aspect of your healthcare. Every person's needs are different. The links to references we've made about news articles, medical studies, or other materials can be found at level989.com/health, along with our contact information and the complete Don't Take Medical Advice from Podcasts disclaimer. Thanks for listening, and now go health yourself.